Arguably the best receiver in the portal could wind up at Miami, even though they don't need him.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Former five-star receivers are all over the place. We're about to talk about one receiver, some more portal buzz, all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Alex Dono, Locked On Canes, is here to give us the latest. Trebor Pena, transfer wide receiver from Syracuse. He's not rated as the top receiver in the transfer portal, Dono. I would have him as the top receiver available, given the other guys who are incredibly capable. You know, you've got Ted Hurst from Georgia State, Micah Hudson, the former five-star. I think there are some good receiver prospects. If Pena had been on another team last year that didn't have a guy like Meeks to catch the ball as well, he would have been a 12 to 1,300 yard receiver. I think he's the best available, and he could wind up at Miami. Yeah, maybe. Penn State's also in the fold here.
Yeah, and he took a visit to Penn State last weekend that reportedly went very well, but it was one of those things where had it gone really, really well, maybe wouldn't have kept taking visits and would have committed. A lot of times, teams, Miami does this sometimes. Every program does this where you like to sell the car in the room. Like you don't want them to leave and go somewhere else. So that hasn't happened yet to this point with Pena. And, he took a midweek visit to Miami. The details on it have been scarce. Like I can't sit here and tell you it was a great visit or a terrible visit. I don't know. But I will tell you from the Miami side of it, when Trebor Pena, when it was announced last week that he was leaving Syracuse and entering the portal, Miami was the first team considered to be, hey, this is a program to watch for him. Texas Tech was also brought up, and he ended up, taking the visit to Penn State, which seemed like, something that they kind of got into his plans maybe a day or two after he entered the portal. So this is definitely, I've been saying it for a while, that this is someone to watch for Miami now. And I agree with you. Pena had an awesome season last year in a Syracuse offense that threw the ball very, very well with multiple weapons. And Pena, among those weapons, playing with a guy like Meeks in that same offense, was, second on the team in receiving yards with a little under 1,000, first in receptions, and first in touchdowns with 9. He had a fantastic year, and he's obviously trying to, parlay that success into, maybe landing with a program he might feel is a bigger spot than Syracuse. Now, to what you said in your opening about, wondering if Miami even really needs him, this has been a hot debate among Miami fans in Coral Gables, okay? Because the Hurricanes, now they are losing their all-time best slot receiver in Xavier Restrepo, who's going to be drafted into the NFL at some point in this draft, probably a day 2 guy. And Pena was basically right behind Restrepo in the ACC and everything, second team All-ACC behind Restrepo at first team All-ACC. So on the one hand, Trebor Pena seems like he would be like a really natural kind of heir to Xavier Restrepo and could have, maybe one really good year at Miami. On the other hand, this is a hot button topic among Miami Hurricanes faithful because Miami's got a couple of young and younger slot receivers who fans are really excited about. They want to see get more opportunities, including Nathaniel Ray Joseph, who's heading to his 3rd year. Hasn't gotten a whole lot of burn at Miami to this point, and part of that is because he played behind Restrepo for the past 2 years when Restrepo put up consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. And Miami also has a true freshman slot receiver. And listen, I think I don't see anything wrong with easing in a freshman. If you were to bring in Trebor Pena, he's a 1-year guy, 1 year of eligibility. So, Malachi Toney is the exciting true freshman. I don't think bringing in a guy like Pena would take too much away from Malachi Toney. You could still find ways to get him on the field while maybe not throwing too much at him as a true freshman. But, the Ray Joseph thing, it divides the fan base, potentially taking more opportunities away from him. I mean, listen, from where I sit, I know that the transfer portal can be a brutal thing. And, sometimes you are going to hurt some feelings and recruit over guys who are already on your team. But this is the winning business, not the feeling business. And it's really up to Mario Cristobal and offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson and receivers coach Kevin Beard. And obviously it's up to Pena because he's got to pick the program he wants to be at. But if there's a consensus that Pena, if he wanted to come to Miami and Miami really wanted him, I think you upgrade your roster as much as you possibly can. And you don't think about feelings as much as you think about putting the best players on the field. Because it's worth saying about Miami, they've got talent at the receiver position, but a lot of unproven talent, Spencer, because they didn't just lose Xavier Restrepo. They lost Jacoby George, who was one of your top wideouts last year. They lost Isaiah Horton, actually, to a transfer to Alabama. He was one of Miami's top receivers. Sam Brown, they lost their top receiving tight end, Elijah Arroyo. So, they lost most of their receiving production, and they have a lot of young guys looking in to step in and take those spots. So, to me, a guy like Trebor Pena would make sense because he's got all of that experience, and he comes off a really productive season.
I think the portal versus young guy debate is not unique to Miami. I think every fan base at some level that can go out and add transfers has that same problem. I don't know that I see it as a problem. I think it can cause some locker room tiffs. It can cause fan bases to get angsty about, or annoyed at why are we recruiting these guys and we're just going to bring in a transfer. And I look at it, I love what you said, it's the winning business, not the feeling business. I look at it as you still want to recruit high school kids at a high level because you want to give yourself the best and most numerous opportunities to have a high-level all-conference player on the field. Sometimes it's going to be a transfer. Sometimes it's going to be a high school kid. And guess what? You can't actually know all the time when it's going to be which. There's a great scene. I was talking about this with regards to baseball, of course, with my dad earlier on the phone. We were talking about Moneyball and the scene where Brad Pitt is talking to, I think, one of the scouts where he's saying, you've sat in those living rooms and you talk to those parents and you say, when I know, I know. And when it comes to your kid, I know. And you don't. And that's what the reality is.
Yeah.
You bring in a high school kid that's got all the talent in the world. You think the potential's there. The potential's there. But it's just that potential. You can say, oh, this is a can't miss. It's just... You're never going to be right 100% of the time. So I think giving yourself an array of options on that front is the best course of action for any program, regardless of what position you're talking about. And Pena reportedly being down to Miami and Penn State, I think there's some others that might try to be in the fold. 24/7 Sports has got a high crystal ball confidence that he's going to wind up at Penn State, where the Nittany Lions need receivers. I think he would be a really, really good fit for James Franklin and company. I think he's needed more at Penn State. I think he has a better chance to be the number one guy up at Penn State than he maybe would at Miami. I think, though, he could be the top receiving target for both schools.
Yeah, and listen, and as a side note, I'll pay a compliment to Penn State because I know that when it comes to Miami and a lot of other schools, Miami, USC, Ohio State, Oregon, you have these reputations about, oh, here comes the big NIL money, right? And we all heard what Fran Brown.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was a little classless to air out his frustrations at Pena.
I disagree. I disagree with you there. No, I like that Fran Brown gave people a peek behind the curtain. I like that he was being honest and that he's legitimately he's clearly trying to establish a defined culture at Syracuse of we're not paying a receiver $2 million a year when you're not Jeremiah Smith. Yeah, it doesn't feel great all the time, but I think that's also sending a message, as negative as that is with Pena. It severs that, you've snipped the umbilical cord there with that relationship, but what you've also done is send a message to the guys in your locker room of, this is not how we operate. I'm not just going to our best player and saying, you're going to get all the NIL dollars. Like, no, we're not paying $2 million for a receiver. Like, is Miami going to pay $2 million for him? Is that what he's going to cost? I don't know.
Well, my thing is, I don't think anybody's paying $2 million for Trebor Pena yet.
No.
It's no disrespect to him. But the thing is, like, again, like throwing that number out there in the pocket watching. And also the thing about Fran, and I'll meet you halfway on it because you raised some good points. The other thing I didn't love about it was, like, Fran, to me, was overplaying the NIL narrative so that he could kind of downplay, hey, maybe Pena's got concerns that his production's going to take a dip because he no longer, has the quarterback that he had last year, and minimizing the offense, which is it's Fran's side of the story. But the point on Pena to me is, if he ends up at Penn State, definitely not paying him $2 million, because, and I'm not saying Penn State doesn't have NIL money, but Penn State's one of those programs that doesn't spend a whole lot. Like, they kind of do it a more conservative way. So if he were to end up at Penn State, I don't think anyone out there would be saying he took a bag from Penn State. Like, I don't think that narrative can exist, because that's not the way the Nittany Lions operate. So, I mean, that would be a message to Fran Brown, if nothing else, if that's where he ends up.
I can't wait to see how this all unfolds. Miami, Penn State, somewhere else. We'll just have to wait and see. What's the NIL offer going to be? We're just going to have to wait and see. Alex Donald, Locked On Canes, Locked On ACC as well. Great, as always. Speaking of adding talented wide receivers, is Arizona State about to do that to bolster their Big 12 championship aspirations? First, this episode brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Check them out at Amazon Fire TV. So it's easy to create a headline, create buzz, attention, all of that sort of stuff. When you say, as a program like Arizona State, former 5-star looking at ASU. Now, Johntay Cook was a one-time Texas Longhorn commit, and then this transfer portal cycle, went to Washington. Okay, it's wise to do what I just did for my audience listening out there, to turn your head and just kind of wonder, well, wait a minute. Why did he go, if he was there, why did he get over there, like Ron Weasley in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban when they're using the time turner? How'd you get there when you were just there, and now you're there? Well, the reason that happened stemmed from reports about off-the-field incidents, violation of team rules. Johntay Cook's a really talented player. He went to Texas, where Steve Sarkisian works really well with wide receivers. I do want to remind you, Emmett Mosley V, the transfer wide receiver from Stanford, just keep an eye on that guy, because I really, really like him going there. And what Steve Sarkisian has done with wide receivers in the last several years has been well documented at this point. Whether that's Xavier Worthy, whether that's Jordan Whittington, whether that's Matthew Golden, like the list goes on and on. And so, if Johntay Cook wasn't able to crack the rotation, there's a lot of talent at Texas, true. Fact check, true. A lot of talent over there. Maybe that contributed to his not playing. But the fact that he went there and wasn't so good right away that Texas felt, we got to put him in the rotation. He's another weapon for Sark to have, because Sark loves having those offensive weapons. Gets him the ball creatively, creates explosive plays, does all sorts of really good stuff. Then he goes to Washington, and he's there for about a cup of coffee. I don't like this idea for Arizona State. What Kenny Dillingham has done in his short time in Tempe, his alma mater, is nothing short of remarkable. Remarkable. Plenty of attention in the last several years. somewhat deservedly so, but not entirely, has been given to Deion Sanders in Colorado in the Big 12 because they have gone from a lifeless, irrelevant program to a nationally relevant, discussed, interesting, and winning program as of this past year. Arizona State is a little bit different. You don't think about Arizona State the same way you think about Colorado. Everybody doesn't have an opinion on Arizona State the way they have an opinion, positive or negative, on Colorado and the Buffaloes. And I'm sure people felt a certain way when Shedeur Sanders went undrafted in the first round yesterday. The reason that's the case, that you don't have an opinion on Arizona State, can't always logically be explained other than the Deion effect. Because what Dillingham has done at ASU is every bit as incredible and impressive as what Deion Sanders has done at Colorado, if not more. He just won the Big 12 a year after going 3-9 and being picked to finish last in the conference. He has brought an energy, a life, and a culture down to ASU. Now, when you go about thinking about bringing someone like Johntay Cook into the fold, who, if you get the most out of him, can 100% help your team. That can go one of two ways. Either he is disruptive for a second straight destination, and it's not a worthwhile thing to pursue if you're Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils, or your culture is so good and so strong that someone who hasn't been able to find his way, a young guy, misguided, not on the best path, attitude-wise or whatnot, if you're able to get him on the straight and narrow, get him not violating team rules. I mean, Washington didn't dismiss him from the program because now we don't think he's talented enough. No, they brought him in because he is. They dismissed him because of stuff off the field. If Arizona State is able to straighten that out for Johntay Cook, that'll be one of the biggest feathers in Kenny Dillingham's cap that you can imagine. Now, do I love the idea? No, because the culture they have embraced there and are continuing to build upon is incredibly strong. Incredibly strong. No doubt about it. You can't argue that. You can't undergo that sort of rapid shift without massive cultural change. Deion did it by showing up and telling a bunch of guys, you're not good enough to be here anymore. He was right, by the way. Kenny Dillingham has done it by saying, we're Arizona State University, and we can be better than this, which they can, and they were one play away, a 4th and 13 away from being in the national semifinal last year. Nothing short of remarkable. So I think the risk is greater than the potential reward. I'm not saying there is no reward. I want this situation to work out. I never want to see talented guys waste their potential because they're not able to do the non-football stuff that they have to in order to succeed. But if Johntay Cook winds up going to Arizona State or wherever he winds up going, I hope he is able to be a better version of himself. That's what I want for him. I think that's what we should all want for these kids. And remember, they are kids. They're going to make mistakes. We've seen it in college football for a very, very long time. It's not the first time it's happened. It's not the last time it will ever happen. But I just think when you have something that is so good, introducing a potential disruptor culturally, there is some absolute risk to that. But if they're able to figure it out, I tell you what, Kenny Dillingham will look even better in my eyes, and I could not look upon him more favorably, not just because we look alike, than I do right now as a football coach, because he is starting to unlock what has long been a sleeping giant. And I'm fascinated to see where Cook ends up. It might not be Arizona State. If it is, we'll see what wins. And I hope it's Arizona State's culture, bringing him in, embracing him, and maximizing his potential. Texas Tech is trying to maximize their overall potential as a football program. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. And if you want to bet college football, you can do that. If you want to make the season feel even closer, we're almost to May. We're just like 3.5-ish months, roughly. We'll call it 4 from a real college football game. If you want to bet on all that, you can check it out over at FanDuel.com. They have a bunch of other stuff too. Win totals, conference title odds. It's all there. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Check them out at FanDuel.com. We are back to talking about Texas Tech. Why? Because Texas Tech, once again, has reclaimed the top transfer portal class in the 2025 cycle. And that's just not something that you would have said 2 or 3 years ago. And I don't even know if the portal was really as big of a thing 3 years ago. It's all blended together. But Texas Tech has landed Cash Cleveland, who is one of the top offensive linemen available in the portal, one of the top offensive linemen that has moved this entire spring. He was a former walk-on at Colorado, but he started at center this past year, had a really good season, and what do you know? He's going to Texas Tech. The Red Raiders, by the way, just so we're all clear, have the highest ranked class over LSU by 0.01. Not 0.1, 0.01 transfer ranking. So huge talent discrepancy there. Huge talent discrepancy. This is the 18th player that is committed to Texas Tech this cycle. 4 of them grade as 4-star transfers, according to 24/7 Sports. And Cash Cleveland continues an emphasis for Texas Tech that I thought they needed to go out and address in the offseason, the trench play. It wasn't good enough last year. They weren't good enough up front, particularly with the defensive line. They went out and got David Bailey, who was probably the top edge available in this transfer portal window. Bo Atkinson also up there, who went to Ohio State from North Carolina. Those 2 guys are going to make an impact on your television this fall. And Texas Tech also added Romello Height from Georgia Tech in the first transfer portal window back in the winter months, which feels like a lifetime ago, but alas, here we are. I like this move a lot. I like this commitment. And Texas Tech actually lost an edge player in Joseph Adair, or Adadir. I'm just going to keep butchering that name. But all Big 12 honorable mention from a couple of seasons ago, had a knee injury, came back, is reportedly at full strength, but that's not a problem for Texas Tech anymore. And I think a couple of years ago it would have been, but the way that they have gone out and attacked the trenches is really, really good. And that they're prioritizing it on both sides of the ball, I think is going to raise both their floor and their ceiling. They already had a pretty high floor. They were a good team last year. They're going to have a good team coming back. If they hadn't made these moves, I think they still have a pretty solid floor because I trust they're going to be able to score points. When you have Baron Morton coming back at quarterback for a 3rd season really of starting at Texas Tech, you're going to be able to score a lot of points, and that's great. But you've got to be able to win some games in the trenches. And I think that Texas Tech has done a really good job here. And Cash Cleveland is just the latest example. Now, of course, he's on the other side of the ball from where the defensive players are. But that trench play matters a great deal as well. And I think Texas Tech did this for a reason. They had some offensive line transfer portal departures, and they just keep buzzing. They just keep buzzing. They keep adding players. And I got this nice message from Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech. Wasn't able to get him on the show, but I did get this nice note. Here's what he had to say about the Red Raiders adding Cash Cleveland at center.
Hello, Spencer. Cash Cleveland, yes. The Red Raiders lost a couple of interior offensive linemen to the portal. They were potential. One was a potential starter, some depth right there, I think, on the interior. They had already hosted one portal visitor in Tyrell Green, who ends up at Purdue. I think Texas Tech passed on whatever the situation was, but Cash Cleveland enters the mix. Ironically enough, he made his first career start in Lubbock last year, I think in early November when the Buffaloes were here. But now he will be wearing a different uniform. I think that some are suspecting he will start or be a depth piece. Bottom line is, it's a really good addition. He's got 3 years of eligibility. Cash Cleveland fits exactly what you lost, but he's also, unlike the 2 that you lost, he's got some game experience. So really good addition by Texas Tech, who continues their portal party and may not be done yet.
May not be done yet. Just think about that. Number 1 class in the country, not done yet, not satisfied. Texas Tech, that's an ascending program right now in the Big 12. So Cleveland comes from Colorado, and if you're thinking to yourself during the entire time listening to or watching this segment, why would you want any offensive lineman from Colorado? They were terrible last year. Well, your instinct is correct. Factually, in this instance, though, you're not quite on base. He was probably the best offensive lineman the Buffs had last year. He had a pass blocking grade of 77, according to Pro Football Focus, which is quite good. He allowed just 1 sack the whole season. That's pretty darn good. I found it hard to believe that someone on the Colorado offensive line only allowed 1 sack, but he wasn't working with a number of other high-end offensive linemen over there. Now I think he's going to a better situation at Texas Tech. So the Big 12 championship expectations continue to evolve and roll along for the Red Raiders in Lubbock, because when you go out and make the sort of investments in facilities and in NIL and in the transfer portal, those are the quickest ways to ascend your program to the next level. And I don't think there's a dominant program in the Big 12. I don't know that there ever will be. This is the early inklings of one becoming that sort of team on an annual basis at Texas and Oklahoma, but that takes a long time. It takes a long time, and I think Texas Tech's focus, rightfully so, is on the 2025 season. That's where it should be, because you're just trying to showcase that when you have this sort of investment, which is the first step, you have to then pay it off on the field. But yeah, expectations are going to be high in Lubbock, and they should be. And I wanted to close with this note, because I saw something that I couldn't quite believe. The only thing more surprising than Micah Hudson visiting Utah is Micah Hudson maybe going back to Texas Tech. I mean, he's about to pull a Caden Proctor, allegedly. There have been predictions and crystal balls with nothing official that Hudson, the former 5-star receiver, could go back to Texas Tech. I'm sure they'd take him. He's really talented. Wasn't a 5-star recruit because he knew the right people in the recruiting world. I mean, you have to at some level, but he's a really talented guy. Didn't have a big year last year. Left Texas Tech, went to Texas A&M, left Texas A&M without ever recording a snap as an Aggie. What was your favorite moment of the Micah Hudson era at Texas Tech, or at Texas A&M rather? And now might go back to Texas Tech. Penn State has poked around Micah Hudson. Penn State's also looking at Trebor Pena, as we talked about earlier. That could maybe be a fit because they're trying to upgrade their receiving core even more, even though they brought in a couple guys in the winter window like Kyron Hudson from USC. But I'm just so confused as to how these things go down. How can you go from I'm here to I'm not here? Okay, I understand that. I'm going over there, same program in state, in a different, bigger, and more lucrative conference financially, to no, that's not the place for me, which I know based on my almost no time spent at College Station. Are these guys putting their stuff in U-Hauls and going to these spots and realizing, nope, not doing it, and just not unloading the truck and driving it straight back? Like, how's that working? How's that work? I don't really know. But the fact that Micah Hudson could return, yeah, it'd be another talented piece. Maybe he could finally settle in and find a significant role in that explosive Texas Tech offense. I don't know. What I do know is I'm following that guy's storyline until the bitter end, because I just can't fathom how you could go from I'm going to over here, no, I'm going back over there. Hey, man, it's college football. It's a crazy, wild, wacky world out there. Few as crazy and wacky as Micah Hudson. But when you've got talent, it's like coaches that have problems off the field. When you win games, a lot can be forgiven, because at the end of the day, production, winning is what matters most. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.